She tilted her head like I was a delivery guy. Said yes. Like that. Yes. As if we hadn't lived together for 7 years. As if I wasn't wearing the shirt she ironed last month. As if she hadn't just come back from a mental clarity hike with her friends. Except it wasn't a hike. And it wasn't just friends. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her with the key in my hand. The same key that still fit in the lock because she never bothered changing it. Her hair was different, blonde again, not the soft brown she said she was growing into. Her makeup was heavier. Her voice was sharper. I wasn't supposed to be there. According to her plan, I was supposed to be 2 states away, staying with my brother, working on myself, whatever that meant. But I came back early, because the silence was too loud. She and her little circle had come up with a challenge. Give your man a full month of silence. See if he breaks. That's what her friend Renee suggested during one of their healing wine nights. The ones where they talk about reclaiming power. But I wasn't playing. I didn't plead, didn't beg. I packed a single bag, left a note, and disappeared like a ghost. No texts. No calls. No status updates. I gave them what they wanted, until I gave them what they feared. Now she was back in our apartment like nothing happened. Like she could pick up where she left off. And I just stood there, watching her act confused while her phone buzzed on the counter. His name flashing bold and familiar. She said, "Do you need something?" I smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile you give when you've already spoken to a lawyer, printed the bank statements, backed up the phone records, and found out exactly where she was that night in Denver when her location glitched. No, I didn't need anything. I already had everything I needed. And this was just the beginning. She kept blinking, waiting for me to say something, anything, but I didn't. I just stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was strategic. Her pupils shifted like she was scanning for an explanation in my face, but I gave her nothing. Just like she gave me nothing for 29 days. She opened her mouth to speak, but I walked past her. Into the kitchen. Same counters. Same fridge magnets. Same coffee mug with a chip in the handle from the night. We argued over gaslighting and boundaries. I placed the mug down like it was evidence, then turned around and saw her arms folded tight across her chest. That's when the mask started to slip. That fake confused smile. Gone. That polite tone. Gone. All that was left was Darla, the version I hadn't seen since before the silence started. The version who could slice a person in half using nothing but a raised eyebrow. "You weren't supposed to come back yet," she finally said. I didn't flinch. "I know." She stared. "So what? You just show up like this? Sneak in?" I used my key. "Yeah, which we agreed you wouldn't." "No," I interrupted. "You said I shouldn't." "I never agreed." Her jaw tightened. And that's when I saw her phone again, face down on the counter, buzzing once more. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. Because I already knew who it was. Denver wasn't in our calendar. It wasn't mentioned in any of her stories. But I saw the hotel reservation on the joint card 2 days after she stopped speaking to me. I saw the Uber charges. I saw the late-night bar tab. And then came the photos. Not from her. From someone else. A woman I didn't know DM'd me a picture of Darla smiling across a rooftop table at some guy with a man bun and a smug little leather bracelet. "You're Chester, right?" The message read. "You deserve to know." I almost vomited. But I didn't confront her. Not then. I waited. I played along with her stupid silent treatment game. I mirrored her coldness. I took every ounce of pain, turned it into planning, and waited for her to dig herself deeper. Now she was standing in the kitchen acting like I was the one interrupting something. And maybe I was. Maybe the guy from Denver was coming back later. Maybe he'd show up with a bottle of red and a fake smile, thinking I was out of the picture. But I wasn't. I was back. And this time, I wasn't here to fix anything. I was here to finish it. The thing about betrayal is, it echoes louder in silence than it ever does in shouting. Darla thought she was clever with her silent treatment challenge. She thought I'd unravel, beg, crawl back like some broken puppy desperate for affection. What she didn't realize was that in the quiet, I started listening. Really listening. And what I heard made everything unravel. The Denver trip was the crack. But it wasn't the whole wall. I didn't go looking for revenge. I went looking for answers. The night after I left for my self-reflection break, I stayed at a roadside motel 2 towns over. I needed time. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to figure out if I was crazy, or if she was really doing what I suspected. So, I hired someone. Not a thug. Not a stalker. Just someone who gets paid to observe what husbands aren't supposed to see. Private investigators aren't like in the movies. They don't wear trench coats or hide behind newspapers. Mine, her name was Lynette, was direct, efficient, and uncomfortably blunt. "You're not crazy," she said after 3 days. "You're just late." Late. That word haunted me. She gave me a small file. Inside, photos, timestamps, chat screenshots from public Wi-Fi logs. I stared at Darla's smiling face, hand on some guy's chest, a cocktail in her other hand, like she'd forgotten the life she built with me even existed. A photo from the hotel lobby, her laughing in yoga pants and slippers, hair wet, leaning into someone who definitely wasn't a coworker. Still, I didn't react. I just went quiet. Because my version of silence wasn't about power. It was about clarity. And clarity gave me control. Back in the apartment, Darla was finally speaking again, but only because she realized I wasn't playing her game. She asked where I'd been. I told her nothing. She asked if I was going to make this into something bigger than it needs to be. I told her I didn't need to make anything. It was already big. It was already done. That night, I went to sleep on the couch. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. She watched me close my eyes without saying a word. Her face was pale, confused. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have control. And she hated it. I could feel it in her movements. The way she hovered in the doorway longer than she should have. The way her breathing changed. She wanted to speak, to ask, to beg. But I just turned and faced the wall. She'd given me silence. Now, she'd learned how brutal real silence could be when you fill it with facts instead of feelings. I didn't need her to admit anything. Because in the morning, I wasn't going to ask questions. I was going to deliver a single envelope and walk out. And what was inside that envelope? Just enough truth to burn down the lies. I left it on the kitchen table. No note. No dramatic gesture. Just a plain white envelope with her name in block letters. Darla. Nothing more. Inside were exactly 4 things. A screenshot of her chat with the man from Denver, pulled from a synced iCloud she forgot was still logged into my laptop. A printed copy of the hotel receipt with both names listed, hers and his. A still frame from the security cam footage outside the rooftop bar, with her arms around his neck. And finally, a single-page summary from Lynette's report, outlining dates, times, and physical evidence. No emotion, just bullet points. Facts. I didn't wait around. I left early that morning and took a long drive without a destination, stopping only for gas and bad coffee. I didn't need to see her reaction. I could already feel it, like a shift in atmospheric pressure. She had weaponized silence like a middle school tactic. What I gave her in return was surgical, cold, final. When I came back late that night, the apartment was different. Not visibly. Nothing was moved, but the air felt heavier. Darla was sitting on the couch with the envelope beside her, unopened but clearly tampered with. I noticed the fold was creased differently. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead like she was watching something that wasn't there anymore. I dropped my keys into the bowl, kicked off my shoes, and headed to the fridge. She finally said something, but her voice was smaller than I expected. "Is this your way of ending it?" I closed the fridge slowly. "It's my way of answering your silence. You wanted a month of quiet? This is what I found inside it." She stood up fast, like she was going to start some grand monologue, but then she didn't. She wobbled for a second, then sat back down, almost whispering, "I didn't sleep with him." That's when I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just broke out of me like a crack in concrete. "You really think that's the line that still matters?" She looked like she'd been slapped. I didn't press further. I wasn't interested in the specifics anymore. Cheating wasn't always about the physical. Sometimes it was emotional. Sometimes it was the erasure of your presence in favor of someone else's attention. Sometimes it was silence. And Darla was the quietest traitor I'd ever met. But the best part? I hadn't even used the most damning card yet. Because the real betrayal, the one she hadn't noticed, wasn't about Denver. It was about her friend. Yeah, Renee. The one who told her to go silent on me in the first place. She shouldn't have picked a side so early. Because I had lunch with her that very afternoon. And you wouldn't believe what she told me. I didn't go to lunch with Renee because I wanted to stir the pot. I went because I needed context. I needed to know why a woman I'd barely interacted with had suddenly become an architect of my wife's silence. I expected her to deny, deflect, maybe even blame me. What I didn't expect was guilt. She chose the cafe, some overly bright place with fake plants and infused water. She wore oversized sunglasses and kept adjusting them like she was waiting to be recognized or maybe hiding from herself. When I sat down, she didn't say hello. She just muttered. I figured this was coming. I let her talk. And wow, she talked. It started with a joke, she said. A dumb group text. Let's go silent on the guys and see who cracks first. She didn't mean it to be serious, but Darla took it as gospel. According to Renee, Darla had been spiraling for months, complaining that I was too available, too predictable, and too boring. Too boring. That was the word that hit me the hardest. I didn't even know boring could cut this deep until I heard someone else say it about me, secondhand. I felt like I'd been trying so hard to be stable, consistent, reliable, things you should be in a marriage. And here it was, being used like a character flaw. But Renee wasn't finished. She leaned forward, voice low, and said, Look, I told her to stop. I told her it was going too far. But she wouldn't listen. She got obsessed with this idea that if she punished you emotionally, you'd suddenly become the version of you she had in her head. Some spontaneous, rugged, unavailable alpha. I blinked. I wasn't even sure what shocked me more, Darla's weird fantasy or the fact that Renee seemed genuinely remorseful. And then came the part that changed everything. Renee said, I didn't want to say anything, but I think she's trying to provoke you. Like, on purpose. Because if you leave, she doesn't look like the villain. I froze. It all clicked at once. The silence. The sudden shift in appearance. The flirtation with someone else. The timing of it all. She wasn't just experimenting. She was sabotaging. And then Renee added one more thing. She didn't expect you to stay quiet this long. Honestly, I think it scared her. You not reacting? That's what made her spiral. I left that cafe with my head spinning. Not because I felt betrayed again, but because I realized I wasn't even the person Darla had been fighting this whole time. She was fighting an idea, a version of me she made up to justify her boredom. And I was done being her experiment. When I got back to the apartment, Darla was pacing. She'd clearly read the rest of the report. The panic was setting in, but I didn't give her the stage. I just walked into our bedroom, grabbed a single overnight bag, and told her flatly, You won. You broke the silence. I hope it was worth what comes next. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I left her alone with the thing she feared most, the echo of herself. I didn't disappear with theatrics. No cryptic message. No dramatic voicemail. I simply left. I stayed off social media, turned off location sharing, and disabled every app that had connected us over the years. I even got a new number, something I never thought I'd do, but it felt necessary. Like a spiritual reset, only with firewalls. The first day, nothing. The second day, nothing. On the third day, she called my mother. And that's when I realized Darla still believed she had control. She thought this was just another phase of mine, a tantrum dressed up as a boundary. But by day 5, when she started calling from unknown numbers and texting, Can we just talk like adults? I knew the silence had finally started to speak louder than anything I could have said, but I didn't respond. Instead, I let someone else pick up one of her calls, my lawyer. He'd been working in the background since the moment Lynette's report came in. We weren't just preparing for divorce. We were preparing for precision. Because when someone weaponizes silence, you don't fight back with noise, you fight back with structure. Turns out, Darla had been sloppier than I thought. We had shared bank accounts, yes, but she'd forgotten about the emergency savings account I opened before we got married. The one only in my name. She also hadn't realized that some of her digital conversations, specifically from our shared home network, could be legally reviewed once we filed. That Denver trip? It wasn't her first. There had been a weekend in Austin, a suspicious conference in Santa Fe, all documented, all logged. But it wasn't just betrayal I was collecting. It was leverage. Because while she spent her month of silence giggling in hotel lobbies and sending curated selfies to people who weren't her husband, I had been rerouting accounts, transferring ownership of shared subscriptions, and reclaiming passwords to utilities, streaming services, even the Netflix profile she used most. Petty? Maybe. But when someone erases you with silence, you stop playing fair. The last thing I did before cutting her off completely was send one final email. Not a message, an invoice. It included every major expense I covered over the last 6 months. Vacation deposits she never took me on, gifts I found still in their packaging, even the high-end mattress I bought after she set her back, hurt from carrying the relationship. I attached receipts, dates, totals. At the bottom, I wrote, "No repayment necessary. Consider this the cost of peace." She never replied, but she read it. For times. And that's when the phone call stopped. Not because she finally understood what she'd done, but because for the first time, Darla realized she wasn't just alone in a quiet apartment. She was irrelevant in the one place she thought she'd always hold power, my life. I should have known it wasn't over. Darla never accepted endings she didn't control. So when I opened my apartment door and saw her standing there, hair a mess, makeup smudged, holding a manila envelope against her chest like it might physically shield her, I didn't feel anger. I felt exhaustion. She didn't say anything right away. Her eyes were glassy, but I couldn't tell if it was real remorse or just performance. I waited, not out of curiosity, but because I wanted to see how long she could stand in her own silence. Then she moved aside, and that's when I saw the woman behind her. Renee, of all people. I couldn't process it at first. Renee looked just as confused as I felt. Her arms were folded, but not in her usual cold posture. This was nervous, defensive, and Darla, still gripping the envelope, finally spoke. "I told her," she said, voice shaking. "I told Renee everything." I didn't answer. I looked at Renee, then back at Darla. And she deserves to know you tried to use her to get back at me." Darla snapped, suddenly finding her voice again. "You think I'm the villain? You think I didn't see what you were doing?" I blinked. "Come again." She shoved the envelope toward me, her tone rising. "You met with my best friend. Had lunch. Confided in her. Got her on your side. Was that just strategy to destroy me, Chester? Or were you actually planning something worse?" I opened the envelope. It wasn't legal papers. It was printed messages, screenshots of texts between Renee and me, which I hadn't sent. I looked up at Renee, who quickly clarified, "Those aren't real. I never sent those." But Darla wasn't listening anymore. Her voice cracked as she said, "You turned everyone against me. You went silent, and suddenly I was the crazy one. You knew exactly what you were doing." She wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't right. Yes, I had lunch with Renee. Yes, I had stopped reacting so she could watch her own behavior in the mirror of her own emptiness. But this was something else. Darla hadn't just unraveled. She had created an entire story to make herself the victim again. She had printed fake evidence. She had dragged her only ally into the fallout. And for what? Control? I handed the envelope back and stepped outside into the hallway. "I didn't turn people against you," I said quietly. "You did that when you made them complicit in a lie you couldn't even carry yourself." Renee didn't speak. She just stared at Darla, wide-eyed and pale. And in that silence, something finally broke, for real this time. Darla's shoulders dropped. Her expression collapsed. She whispered, "I don't know who I am without the drama." That's when it hit me. The silence wasn't my revenge. It was her fear. She didn't know how to exist in peace. She needed chaos to feel alive, needed conflict to feel relevant. And now, with nowhere left to wage, she was just a woman standing in a hallway, clutching lies, begging for something to fight. But I had no fight left to give. I never responded. Not to the text, not to the email, not even to the voicemail that started with, "Please, just hear me out." I didn't need to. Because healing doesn't require dialogue with the person who broke you. It just requires silence, the kind you choose, not the kind forced on you. After that day in the hallway, I never saw Darla again. Renee sent me a short apology by email. I didn't reply, but I appreciated that she owned her part. She moved to another city a month later. Darla, I heard through the grapevine, was going through something she called a personal rebrand. Yoga, new haircut, therapist. I hope it's real. I really do. But it's not my responsibility anymore. Because I finally stopped being the fixer. I stopped needing closure from the person who created the damage. Instead, I rebuilt. It wasn't glamorous at first. I stayed with my brother for a while, got a cheap little rental near a dog park even though I didn't own a dog. Just like the sound of them. Happy, ridiculous noise. Noise with no expectations. I started going on hikes. Real ones, not the made-up kind Darla used to invent. I learned to cook for myself, not to impress or appease. I even bought a new mattress. Same brand, different bed. That felt symbolic. And slowly, something strange happened. I stopped needing to be heard. I stopped rehearsing arguments in my head. I stopped checking old text threads. I even deleted the folder with all the evidence Lynette gave me. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer controlled me. A few weeks ago, I met someone. No drama. No weird energy. We were both reading the same book at a cafe, and we laughed at the same line. That's all it took. She doesn't know about Darla yet. She doesn't need to. I'm not who I was anymore. And that's the twist no one saw coming. Not even me. The revenge wasn't in proving her wrong. It was in finally being free to live a life where I'm no longer waiting for someone else to speak. Because silence, when you choose it, it's not loneliness. It's peace.